Boxing enters the final stretch of the year in a curious position. The sport is still buzzing from one of the boldest crossover events in recent memory. Terence Crawford comprehensively outboxing Canelo Alvarez in a spectacle that dominated headlines and debate, but the calendar ahead looks thin on genuine, must-see main events. Beyond a handful of solid matchups and a slate of prospects trying to turn themselves into contenders, the conversation has tilted toward an exhibition that hardly anyone would have predicted 12 months ago would command so much attention. Jake Paul and Gervonta "Tank" Davis are expected to share a ring in a non-sanctioned bout that will drive clicks, arguments, and pay-per-view sign UPS far out of proportion to its sporting stakes. That does not mean the sport is without serious fights. There is real intrigue in the heavyweight division as October closes, with Joseph Parker scheduled to face Fabio Wardley in a bout that may lack the glitz of the biggest stadium nights but has the attributes that matter: form, relevance, and consequences. Parker and Wardley are not crossover celebrities or perennial headliners, yet both are among the best heavyweights on current form, both carry momentum, and both have voiced the same goal: a shot at Oleksandr Usyk. If you follow boxing news closely, you know that the three-belt champion has no confirmed opponent and a set of obligations looming. Parker had been in position via the WBO as a mandatory challenger, yet Team Usyk passed on that route for now, fueling a fresh round of speculation about the champion's plans. The frontrunner theory remains that Usyk is holding out for a third fight with Tyson Fury. The two men met twice in 2024, and the Ukrainian southpaw prevailed both times with performances that reinforced his reputation as the most complete heavyweight of his era. Fury, who publicly announced his retirement, has left enough doors open with his language and behavior to keep a trilogy within reach if the terms align: money, sight, timing, and sanctioning body permissions. If that bout can be made, it would trump any other option on the table. If it cannot, the clock will begin to tick louder on the mandates that accompany a multi-belt reign. The IBF's turn is next in line, with mandatory challenger status to be decided through a final eliminator. That eliminator will feature Frank Sanchez, the slick Cuban technician few elites favor as a voluntary opponent. The Sanchez picture has become a case study in risk and reward at heavyweight. On paper, the prize is substantial. A win in a sanctioned final eliminator means a guaranteed title shot, either against Usyk or for a vacant IBF title if circumstances push the belt free. In reality, the proposition comes with hazards that are hard to ignore. Sanchez is a difficult knight for anyone. Trained in the Cuban school, he offers fast feet for a big man, patient setups, educated counters, and a temperament that refuses to be bullied into exchanges. He rarely looks flustered, he wins rounds, and he makes opponents look worse than they are. He is also not a massive ticket seller in most markets. That combination, a high-caliber, low-upside assignment, scares off more heavyweights than it attracts. We have already seen that logic play out. Ajagba, a dangerous puncher in his own right, declined the IBF eliminator when Sanchez's name came up. Now comes the bigger development. Moses Itama, the most hyped young heavyweight in the sport, has also passed on the opportunity. For weeks, industry chatter suggested Itama might skip stages and take his place in a final eliminator, grabbing the pole position to challenge Usyk. Some observers even floated early rumors of a direct Usyk-Itama clash, an audacious jump that would make him the rare 20-something to walk into a heavyweight title fight ahead of schedule. The talent is real. Itama is viewed by many insiders as the most dangerous heavyweight outside of the champion himself, a mix of speed, physicality, and composure that does not come around often. If he had chosen to fight Sanchez, the betting markets might have installed him as a narrow favorite, and a victory would have booked him the IBF mandatory position. That is not how the next chapter will unfold. Itama and his team have declined the eliminator. The reason has not been publicly detailed, but the decision sends a clear message about priorities and timing. Either he and his advisors believe Sanchez represents more risk than reward right now, or they are close to finalizing a different fight that makes more sense, financially, strategically, or both. It could be a higher-profile opponent that anchors a domestic stadium show. It could be a bout that offers a comparable purse with fewer technical hazards. It could be a bid to keep him active against styles that accelerate his development without jeopardizing the long arc toward championship contention. Whatever the calculus, it intersects with a broader set of questions hanging over the heavyweight division, and it leaves the IBF scenario more open than it was a week ago. The path to a heavyweight title is rarely linear. Sanctioning bodies operate on rotations, purse bid deadlines, and exceptions that carve out detours for super fights. Usyk's camp understands that reality better than most. If a trilogy with Fury re-enters the conversation in earnest, the IBF timetable will either be navigated through a special exception or it will force a choice. Defend the belt against the mandatory, agree a step-aside arrangement, or surrender the title and fight the bigger event as a three-belt champion. The IBF, historically the strictest of the four major organizations, is not known for granting endless leeway. That is why the eliminator matters and why Sanchez's opponent is such a pivotal piece of the puzzle. While belt politics grind forward behind the scenes, Joseph Parker and Fabio Wardley are preparing for their own reckoning. Parker, a former WBO world champion, has rebuilt his credentials with a steady mix of wins over veterans and contenders. He brings experience at the elite level, a sharp jab when he commits to it, quick hands for a heavyweight of his size, and a nose for back-half adjustments in 12-round fights. He has learned to pace himself, to pick the right moments to land tidy combinations, and to shepherd leads across the line on the cards. Wardley represents another kind of threat, an aggressive, athletic heavyweight who can close distance fast and has the kind of finishing instincts that turn manageable rounds into minor crises. He does not arrive with Parker's resume, but he arrives with momentum and the belief that now is the time to take out a known quantity and claim his place in the queue. Their match is not a sideshow in a slow month. It is a legitimate barometer of the division as it stands, and it is a reminder that while the conversation always drifts back to Usyk and Fury, just as it drifted to Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder in the previous era, there is significant depth in the top 10. A Parker win would keep him in line when any of the major titles shake free. A Wardley win would reposition him overnight from aggressive contender to serious threat, knocking at the door where big names listen. Either way, the heavyweight news cycle will bend around the result. Hovering over all of this is the exhibition that will monopolize attention from a different audience segment. Jake Paul, the social media star turned professional boxer with a knack for self-promotion and matchmaking, and Gervonta "Tank" Davis, one of the heaviest punchers pound for pound in the sport, are set to produce a spectacle that promises entertainment value and a barrage of talking points. Because it is an exhibition, it will not impact rankings or titles. But as a media property, it will siphon attention away from conventional bouts and inject money into the ecosystem through pay-per-view buys, sponsor deals, and a flood of secondary content. Purists will groan, as they always do, but even skeptics concede that these events broaden the audience, pulling casual viewers into a calendar where serious fights await. The heavyweight axis is still where the sport's credibility rests, and that is why the Atama decision deserves measured analysis. The most obvious explanation is the simplest. He is 20 years old and does not need to rush. Heavyweight boxing has a long memory of precocious talents pushed too fast. The pendulum has swung back toward development that is staged and deliberate. 10-rounders against sturdy opponents with different styles, learning to box through lulls, learning to manage nerves when a cut opens, learning to solve problems without the ring catching fire. There are only so many nights each year, and each one carries risks you cannot take back. If Atama's team believes one more training camp, one more 12-rounder, or one more year at a slightly lower level will make him a better champion later, it would be hard to argue the point. Risk-reward is not just about winning versus losing. It is also about how you look while doing it. Styles make nights. Sanchez has made a career out of forcing fighters to reset, outworking them in spots without taking unnecessary chances, and collecting clean rounds without the chaos that thrills TV audiences. Think about what happens if a heavily favored prospect wins 7-5 on the cards against that kind of opponent in a slow fight. The mandatory slot is secured, but the aura takes a dent and leverage at the negotiating table can soften. Conversely, if the opponent is more straightforward, less lateral movement, more exchanges, more TV-friendly, an emphatic win can do more for a brand than a narrow victory over a skilled, risk-averse technician. It is an unromantic way to think about matchmaking, but in 2025 it is how careers are managed. There is also the possibility that the Atama camp has a different name on the line. British heavyweight boxing thrives when homegrown prospects can headline at home, and the calendar offers multiple windows for arena shows that become events unto themselves. A well-matched fight against a domestic rival with a built-in narrative often outperforms a higher-stakes eliminator in terms of ticket sales and buzz. An alternative could be a fight against a seasoned former contender who brings credibility and rounds without the same risk of a tactical standstill. Those bouts create headlines, fan interest, and a clear path to a marquee matchup next summer. For Usyk, the waiting game continues. If the Fury trilogy gathers pace, the sanctioning bodies will become a chorus of competing priorities. The WBO, WBA, and IBF all take their turn calling mandatories, and each grants or denies exceptions on its own terms. The IBF has a reputation for strictly enforcing its rules. If the final eliminator produces a legitimate challenger, Sanchez versus whomever accepts the assignment, the champion could be ordered to defend within a set window. If he cannot, a vacant title fight would be ordered. That process has played out before across divisions, and it often opens a lane for two contenders to fight for a red belt while the biggest event in the sport proceeds on its own axis. If the IBF title does come free, the winner of the eliminator would have first dibs, and a new champion would be crowned without a punch thrown by the man considered the best in the division. It is not ideal for boxing purists, but it is the machinery that keeps belts moving. In that scenario, the Itama decision might look different in hindsight. He could circle back to the eliminator if it remains available, or he could position himself to fight the winner of a vacant title bout rather than Sanchez directly. In a division this fluid, opportunities reappear. A good run of wins and the right timing can propel a contender into a title fight faster than a rigid schedule suggests. That is especially true when broadcasters, promoters, and sites such as Riyadh are eager to assemble fights with global footprints. Money and timing can accomplish what rankings alone cannot. For fans trying to parse the next few months, it helps to look at the calendar in layers. On the top layer are the outliers, the Paul Davis exhibition and any mega fight announcement that could drop out of nowhere if Usyk and Fury shake hands on terms. Those events will dominate mainstream sports coverage and social media. On the second layer are the fights that determine the sport's direction. Parker versus Wardley, and whichever heavyweight steps up to face Sanchez in the IBF final eliminator. Those nights decide who gets to talk about belts with a straight face. On the third layer are the prospect showcases where careers are built. That is where you will find Moses Itama, whether against a veteran name that can give him tough rounds or a fellow rising heavyweight that offers jeopardy and a spotlight. The strategic questions extend beyond matchmaking. Networks and streaming platforms are aligning their plans for 2025 around a handful of tentpole events and a consistent rhythm of shoulder programming, documentaries, fight week shows, and behind-the-scenes content that turns a fight into a week-long conversation. In this ecosystem, fighters who can move the needle with personality and performance are more valuable than ever. Itama fits that profile, which is another reason his team may prefer to unveil him on their own terms rather than risk an awkward 12 rounds against a minimalist stylist with a smaller following. The IBF mandatory slot is a powerful carrot, so is the momentum that comes from wowing an audience and converting casual viewers into fans.